Hi, good morning, everyone. So I think we need to still wait for a couple of minutes. I only see one attendee. And I think I'm already recording the meeting. Yes. Can you hear me? Can I have a thumbs up or a raise or something that you can all see me and hear me? Hi, good morning. Ah, hello, microphone. Microphone. Ah, yes. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Should we start?
Yeah, it's recorded anyway. So we can add it.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Excellent. So all can hear me. Excellent. Great. If you have the time when I'm going to show the presentation, just feel free to either pop it in the chat or just stop me and ask any questions. So I'm going to share my presentation. Yes. Can you all see this? Good. Morton is my check. Yes, excellent. It's working. Great. Okay, so my name is Kitty Kovács. If you don't know me, or Kitty Zalatnai Kovács, if I'm going to use my husband's name as well, and I'm a qualified psychologist and then also a person-centered therapist. I school for 9 years now, and I'm the school psychologist for 7 years in the school. I have a master's degree in psychology. I'm a qualified psychologist, and I've also finished an extra course, I think 2 years ago, to become a person-centered therapist. And I will talk about a bit more about this type of approach that I use in the counseling sessions. I think I take off the headphone because can you also hear me like this way? Because I don't see the point to have the headphone on. Should be working. Okay. So, what are your thoughts? If you can just pop up some words or any sentences in the chat, I can see what your thoughts are. Anything in the chat? Okay, then should I just explain and go in, dive in? Okay. Okay, then I'm going to just dive in and tell you the two differences between counseling and psychotherapy, because I think there are some misunderstandings sometimes about how school psychologists work and what's the difference between a psychotherapy and the counseling. With the counseling, it's mainly a talking therapy that involves a qualified psychologist listening to your difficulties, trying to help you to find the ways to deal with your emotional issues. And with the psychotherapy, it's a form of treatment, and it involves deeper connections, and it involves to have a deeper level. Usually, our clients or patients who go into psychotherapy, they have a diagnosed mental disorder, and they would seek for a clinical psychologist help, not for counseling. Counseling is mainly for people and for students and children who are healthy in a way that they don't have any of diagnosed mental issues, any kind of diagnosed problems. And for counseling, a qualified psychologist is needed, the higher levels of education is needed. So, for example, a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. And as I've said, I'm a qualified psychologist, so I'm qualified to do counseling. But if any students in the school would need a psychotherapy, to a different professional, to a different agency. How can you make referrals? How does it look like? It can tutors can referral students can self-referral themselves. How it usually works is if you am I back? Okay. Can you see the screen? Okay. Good morning. Hi. I was at the referral forms. So with class teachers and tutors, what usually happens if in the classroom, the class teacher see any kind of students who are struggling with any kind of emotional difficulties, of course, at first they will try to solve them by themselves. Talk to the students, talk to the parents to see if there's any changes at home or what can indicate this kind of emotional difficulties. If they believe that my support would be helpful, then they would reach out for me and ask my opinion about it. How it usually goes that I talk to the parents first before I would see the child or would even see the student. So I would invite the parents in for a parent meeting, and in this way, I usually ask parents to fill out an anamnestic interview. There are a lot of questions, different questions, and it usually goes for parents who are agreeing to to start counseling. So for example, if some parents would see that, okay, I don't think the counseling is the right support at the moment, so let's just try to sort out any situations at home, then of course we are accepting this guideline, and then we're not going to push anyone, any families to start counseling. But if they would like to start counseling, then I would have this anamnestic interview, which is usually contains questions about the pregnancy, some questions about the early years of the child. Some of them are quite sensitive, but it's important to know that these questions and answers only going to be seen by me, and it can be extremely useful for me to have a background of the family and have all these essential information to work together. And if the student also agrees to start the counseling, then this is when we're going to and have an appointment for it. And after 4 extra help needed, or we should continue these counseling sessions or not. It's also really important to know that when I have these sessions with the students, I'm telling them that everything that they're telling me in this office, in this room, is staying between us. So when I have another meeting with the parents after the counseling sessions, I'm always asking the students, even the younger ones, the year ones or year 2 students as well, what can I say to your parents? Can I share this information with them or not? It's quite rare when they say, please don't this tell my mommy or daddy. It's quite rare. They are really open with the parents as well, but to following the ethical guidelines and to make sure that they feel safe, I always tell this to the students that everything is staying between us. In these sessions, we usually do some drawings as well to try to explore some subconscious levels to see how the students are actually feeling. And then after these drawings and after these playings and sessions, I invite the parents back in. If students refer themselves, it happens in a way that they can find me in this room in the break times from year 4 and above. And we can have an initial meeting. But after the initial meeting, I always contact the parents and tell that your child has approached me, and then she or he would like to have some counseling sessions, whether you're agreeing or not. And of course, I also let the tutors and the class teachers know, but what the topics are and what we're talking about is staying between us. And of course, you parents can also refer to students or children to me. So it happened many times that the parents reached out to me because there were some changes in the family household system. So there will either a separation or they are moving away and they would like some help to prepare the child in this moving or prepare the child if there's any separation. So of course you can also reach out to me if you have any help or you would need any kind of support in this way. And there's always a parent consent form given out, and I will also show you how it looks like. Yes, this is the parent agreement that every parent needs to sign if they would like their children to assign for a counseling session. It's a pretty standard ethical parent agreement. In this way, you are allowing me to see your child and participate in individual counseling, and you're also understanding and accepting that you will also have some consultation times with me. I think it's really important. I will talk about later on about how important it is to work together with the family to maintain a close relationship and have parental consultations while you are also having the counseling with the student. And in this way, it also stating that you're accepting that the personal details and all of the information that the child is telling me during these sessions are staying between us. And I'm going to handle this information confidentially, not going to be given to a third person, except there is any possibility for any harm to self or others or any abuse or neglect. So it's a pretty standard guideline that during every counseling or every kind of therapy that outside of school would use. And I find it quite important that all the parents were signing it before we start the counseling. What kind of issues can be helped with counseling? There are different problems that students can find me with. I think the most common one, especially after the COVID is the anxiety, when they feel anxious about situations, when they feel more emotionally overwhelmed. Frustration and anger management also can be one of the problems that they usually find me with. But what we are working on most of the times is how to recognize and express emotions, how to deal with problems in the school. Peer issues usually happen, and friendship issues usually happen from year 3 and above. This is when the drama comes in. This is when also the hormones are starting to change a bit more. So the peer issues are coming mainly from year 4, 5, and 6. And self-esteem is also one of the main things that we are working on together. But as I said, one of the most common ones is when they feel anxious. And of course, at this young age, they cannot really articulate these feelings and state that, yes, miss, I am anxious and I would like to help. It's mainly that you would see some psychosomatic problems, especially a stomach ache or tummy ache or headache that they feel, and then there are no actual physical reason behind it that you would find. There are no illness or there is no any kind of sickness that the doctor would find, but they actually can feel tummy ache or headache. It's quite common with the younger ones. And these anxiety issues can come from different sources. It can relate to the school. It can relate to in a way that they had a bad experience with the previous school and they generalize this feeling to the new school, for example. Or it can also happen that they're anxious because they would like to perform really, really well. Even subconsciously, parents can have these expectations to their children without even noticing it. And children can actually feel these things and mirror it back and have these kind of symptoms. It's quite common, especially after the COVID, as I said. I see raising tendency with this. It's getting better now after we had a couple of years since the COVID, but I noticed it after we came back from homeschooling. It was quite often happen with students. And another quite common situation when the parents are seeking for my help is when they have different systems then they have differences in the household. So, for example, when a separation comes in place, it also happens quite often. And then in this case, I also try to help the parents how to talk to their children, how to deal with these situations, and what to tell, and in what circumstances to ask for different help. These issues are mainly for primary kids. I was on maternity leave last year, and before maternity leave, I was working with secondary students as well. And in secondary students from year 7 and above, anxiety is also a quite common issue, mainly connected with some test anxiety, and when they have their exams, they feel there are more pressure now because they are reaching towards the universities later on. It can also happen that they show some symptoms with depression, but without being diagnosed with depression, and also quite often happens when they have panic attacks that we need to deal with and help these students with. What to expect from counseling? As I said, I'm a qualified psychologist, and I just finished your course a couple of years ago to become a person-centered therapist. The person-centered approach was started by Carl Rogers, and then I fully agree with what he said. And the 3 really important parts of the counseling session, and I think every kind of therapy session should be the basics, is that you can offer a place, a safe space, and a time for a person where you are going to be accepted the way how you are, an unconditional positive acceptance, and you're going to become empathic towards these people who are coming for sessions. And then you're also going to become congruence, which means that you as a therapist, as a psychologist, are true to yourself and being honest and transparent. And I think these 3 points are extremely important from any kind of age when we're talking about counseling, because they can only feel safe in a place where they have a person who is also showing this kind of skills and showing this kind of values. I always tell to my students when I'm working with them that I'm not a magician. I cannot just wand and then help them to get away with all the problems and just take away all the problems. But I can show them how I do it. For example, they can also see that I also have some difficulties sometimes. I also share, of course, with their understanding language and without any sensitive or intimate information, but I also share if I face a difficulty and how do I deal with it, because I think if they see that we are also vulnerable people and then have some difficulties, they are going to trust us more, and they're going to accept and see that, okay, other human beings and adults can have also issues, and it's not a big deal if I need to ask for some help. So I think these three values are extremely important when you are in a therapy and when you're in a counseling session. And I truly believe it also goes with younger ones as well. And I think sometimes with people, they have this prior knowledge that counseling is going to solve their problems in a minute, and then we will tell you what to do, and we will tell you all the answers for the questions. But the main idea behind the counseling is that you try to find out what is the issue, you explore your own issues, your own feelings and beliefs, behavior, and then later on you become self-aware and you can also find some independence how to deal with this. With younger children, it's also going in the same way, I believe. Of course, they cannot really articulate these feelings. They are not as self-conscious yet, although I've seen some younger students who are so reflective to their life and so self-conscious about themselves and have a great understanding themselves. But with younger ones, it's mainly if we put this situation, put these three values into room, is mainly to allowing them to feel freely, no matter what. Meaning that if they would like to come in and then let their actual feelings out, which involves screaming in the pillow, then it's okay to scream in the pillow and you can let your feelings out. Because the first thing what we can do is just channel these feelings out before we can actually work on the problem. What kind of tools am I using in these sessions? Well, it mainly depends on the children, mainly depends on the problem. I have a nice board game I made, and I also use it with the sessions with the younger ones when I have 2-3 students together. This is a board game for conversation. There's no actual name it because I made it for myself. And there are different questions in it that would involve questions like describe your family in 3 words, or for example, when was the last time you were sad? When was the last time you were angry? And since it's implemented into a board game, it's not so direct, and they would not even notice that they're answering these questions. And then we can actually start a conversation and then explore these topics in more deeply. And of course, I have card games. We have a dollhouse in the room that we are quite often using. We're using imaginative plays, social stories. I have an excellent book which called is When My Worries Get Too Big. And with this book, we can actually have a starting point to talk about the different triggers that can be difficult for a student. And then, of course, it's just a guideline, and it would involve more exploration with the student and the family. What can really help us as a starting point. It's important to also show, especially if they have anxiety, some emotion regulation techniques and breathing techniques. I have different ways with the breathing techniques. Not all of them are working with every student. It depends on the student as well, of course. Some of them are more prone to it and be more open to it. Some of them would just shut it out and would say, no, it's not working for me. I don't want to do any breathing techniques. So of course, these tools are just a list that I am using, and it always depends on the child itself. On the right side, you can see this plushie, and I use this with the younger ones when they have any kind of problems. I always teach them that there are situations that we can control, and there are situations and feelings that we cannot control. And sometimes one of the help can be, before we can do anything else, is just to put aside these feelings for a second and give this to this problem meeting plushie. So we can write down in a piece of paper what the problems are or what are the situations. We give it to this plushie, and then later on we can come back to it and try to solve it. But there are sometimes times when we just need to put aside for a second. With older ones, it's mainly working in a guided affective imagery way. So I ask them to imagine, for example, a container or a box where they can put these feelings and the situations in a box, and then later on, of course, we can also go back to it. But actually, I firmly believe that what is working is the relationship what you have with the students. So if I can maintain a close rapport and a close relationship with the students and make them sure that they feel safe and content in this room with me, this relationship can be the most effective way to have these students. So there are many different techniques, many different worksheets and books and booklets and different games, but I think the most effective one and then the healing one is the relationship what we can build together. And effective tool, because you know your child the best, you are with them 24 hours, you are not going to give any outside voice or any kind of guidance, but you are your experts of your children. So the parent consultations are extremely important in this process. Not within a school psychologist competence, students with diagnosed mental disorders should seek for help with a clinical psychologist. It happened especially in secondary when I had students who had been diagnosed with either generalized anxiety disorder or diagnosed with depression, and I was still working with them because there was a parent agreement and the student was really insisting to my personality, to work with me, and then refuse to work with anyone else. In these occasions, there are some exceptions, and I always work with under supervisor guides. So I always have another psychologist outside of school I'm seeing and working closely together. So we are talking about the cases and supporting each other. And of course, in these occasions, I also tell the parents that the most ethical way would be that you seek a clinical psychologist professional. But of course, the main goal is to support the student, and if the student is happy to work with me and I have a supervisor guidance, it means I can, of course, not going to say no to these occasions. A school psychologist cannot provide diagnosis, but I can do observations and some internal assessments and to recommend other professionals if that's the case. But any of our tests or any assessments that we are using here, either the drawings or either a test for anxiety is, of course, not providing any diagnosis, but some can give us some insights whether we should seek for a different help or try to find a different professional. The main ethical guideline suggests that school psychologists only work students who are sine morbo, meaning that they don't have any kind of mental problems. And as I mentioned, the collaboration beforehand with the tools, I think counseling can only work if parents are working closely together with me, with the school psychologist, because we have different children, we have different problems, but the family support is the most important and effective help. And it happens quite often that families don't always agree with the parenting style, for example, especially if they separated, they would have a different way how they would like to raise their children. And in these occasions, this disagreement can have an effect on the child. And if I can actually help the parents and convince them to work together as a team in order to support the children, it can be the most effective way. Because by myself alone in this room, I cannot do magic, but if we work together and support each other and have a close relationship and a constant communication, that can actually make a difference and make a change, and we can help and support our students to feel better. I think it's quite often the case that students are mirroring what is going on in a household or what is going on in the school. because in most of the cases, their mental state is just a mirror to us, how they actually feel. And it's really important to keep this in mind, that the family is one of the most important parts of this counseling process. I'm not saying that in every situation families are causing any issues to their children, but we cannot take away the child from the system. We always need to look at the child in within the system most of the time. It happens, of course, that other reasons come into place, as I mentioned. So, for example, previous bad experience in schools that they generalize, and then they would also react in the same way as they reacted in the other school and have some psychosomatic symptoms because of anxiety. But the family part and the collaboration with the family is the most essential one in this counseling process. And there are occasions when there are situations when the school psychology support is not enough in these occasions. And if we see that the difficulty for the student is coming from the family system, I quite often recommend family therapy, because, as I said, children should be seen as part of the family, which is a system. And in these family therapy sessions, the primary goals are to create a better home environment, to solve some family issues, to understand the unique issues that the family faces. I think quite often the communication is the key. Most of the time, somehow not on the right level with each of the parents, misunderstandings, and they get some conflicts that can actually cause some difficulties within the family. And I think it's a great asset to find the root of the problem. And then in these occasions, I'm really happy to help to channel the children's frustration, anger, or anxiety. But it's really important to understand that the root cannot be fixed if it's come from the system. So in these occasions, I think the family therapy would be the most effective one. And I usually see students, I had happened in secondary as well and in primary as well, that I was working with the student, and you could not see a huge improvement, but it was mainly about fixing fixing the daily problems and fixing the daily anxiety and daily anger management issues. But in the long run, the only thing that helped later on is when the family actually seek for family therapy, and this is when the actual change came in the picture. And this is what I planned for today, and I will still have time for questions, because I think there might be some questions about how counseling look like and what else am I doing here. But I was just telling to Mrs. Morton that it's so reflects for me now how I'm doing these things, that I tend to forget some important parts, or I tend to forget some really basic parts that can be a question for you. So please pop up any questions in the chat, or just ask me also if you unmute your mic if you have any questions. Yes. Are there any questions with the processes for anything, or the techniques itself? If you have any questions that you would not like to ask in the chat or in the meeting itself, you can find my email address on the website, and you can just email me anytime. I'm happy to answer any of your questions, or if you have any kind of inquiries in regards of any kind of professionals or just about counseling or special educational needs. Okay, so if you have any other questions that comes up later on, just please let me know or let Mrs. Morton know, and then she can forward the email to me as well.
Is it okay if the child's interest on an activity is very limited? That's the question.
Or you mean that if the kid's interest on activity is always for a short period of time, for a short span? That's the question?
Yeah, I think. Yes, she just said yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the children's age, of course. So from a younger age, it is totally okay to switch between activities quite often. It depends on whether whether you find it as a problem or not, and whether if it's a problem, is it causing any difficulties in the school life as well. Because just because if an interest switching between activities quite often, I would not see if it's a problem unless it's causing any difficulties with you in the family or causing any difficulties in the school. Having a shorter attention span can, of course, can mean a lot of things. And if a situation like this occur, teachers usually come and see me, and then we try to find if there's why a child's interest or attention would be shorter in this case. But generally, in this question, I can say I don't think it's a problem at all. But if you tell me more about the age or more about this in a private meeting or a private email, I'm happy to answer this in a more detailed way. You're welcome.
Oh.
If you have any further questions, just email me and then we can talk about it. You're welcome. Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you for your attention, and just email me anytime if you have any other question that comes up later on after this webinar. Thank you for joining us. Bye.